ever telegraphed, that did not mean it would make it into print. There was a lot of competition from the other schools. I can still recall the stress of not knowing whether my work would make it into print until the schools column appeared every Friday afternoon. I've often thought about why I so love daily journalism. Fundamentally, it's the sheer joy of storytelling, the spinning of the narrative itself. It's like reading a good novel or watching a movie. How will the story end? What will be the outcome of that close Senate vote? On the most exciting stories, honest reporters will tell you that we have no idea either. Separately, there is the excitement of being an eyewitness to history. As journalists, we are privileged because we gain entry to places where the average reader or viewer cannot go. Once we're there, it's our mission to relay the facts and more. Context, background, the larger meaning of events. Often the challenge is to provide the right words to give focus to the lasting images that, stitched together, create our visual history. Even now, the moment that captures the beginning of the end of the Cold War for me is Ronald Reagan in Berlin on a June day in 1987, demanding that Mikhail Gorbachev tear down that wall. It is indelible because I was there. Just as I will always recall the September morning in 1993 when Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat finally shook hands on the south lawn of the White House, representing the first real hope that Israelis and Palestinians could someday live together in peace. On a much less elevated plane than becoming an eyewitness to history, being a journalist lets you satisfy the guilty pleasure of enjoying rumor, gossip, and special access to uncommon knowledge. Along with these impulses comes the nobler aspiration of educating and informing the public. We broadcasters also have that performer's gene, generating oversized egos that need constant nourishment. Being a reporter has transported me from a row house in Philadelphia to a yurt on the steppes of Mongolia. I've tangled with politicians of all types and presidents of every political persuasion. I've been tossed out of bed by an earthquake and a NATO airstrike on the same night in Belgrade, and had my job threatened by figures ranging from a big city mayor to the chief of staff of the President of the United States. From wartime to peace, through struggles over race, gender, and economic justice, I've been privileged to cover politics and foreign policy during the administrations of every president from Jimmy Carter to George W. Bush. From the vantage point of a front-row seat, this is that story, and mine. It is the story of a woman who made her way in an old boy's world, ever Miss Clare's eager pupil, inspired not just by Miss Clare, but also by amateur detective Nancy Drew, and comic strip character Brenda Starr. In my dreams, I was that detective or that girl reporter, eager to uncover plots and investigate mysteries, gutsy, glamorous, and ageless, an independent woman leading a fabulous life. It hasn't always been a smooth ride, and I didn't often have a roadster or a plan of action as reliable as Nancy Drew's. But to this day, I love digging for details, speed dialing to find eyewitnesses, persuading insiders to talk. Our job as journalists is to throw ourselves into this great game, celebrating moments of political courage while never hesitating to expose hypocrisy and corruption. Sometimes that requires talking back to power, whether to presidents, dictators, or lesser scoundrels. That is still my mission today, as clearly as it was the first day I entered a newsroom, eager to share the latest news from the 6th grade. I was introduced to broadcasting by accident. As a freshman at Penn, during a meeting on the top floor of Houston Hall, the student activity building, I heard music and wandered down the corridor to discover the studios of the university's 50,000-watt non-commercial radio station, WXPN. The format was almost entirely classical music, mixed with what we called folk music on Saturday night and jazz after midnight. They told me they could use help programming music, and before long I was hooked. I loved choosing the music, timing the cuts, balancing the selections. And more than anything, I loved performing on the air, introducing the pieces and reading notes about each composition. If I was in a hurry, I'd read the liner notes on the back of the albums. When I had more time, I dug deeper and researched the background of individual compositions. Soon I had my own program, an hour of chamber music airing every Tuesday night at 8. Pretentiously, I called it Musica da Camera. The theme was the third movement of Respighi's Ancient Airs and Dances for the Lute. I programmed my choices, back-timing each selection, and read introductions to fill the hour. The station had a 4-person management team, by tradition and practice, all male. Gradually, I took on more and more responsibilities, and by my second year became the first woman to break into their ranks by being selected to be program manager of the station. This could not have happened at the other Ivy League schools, even Cornell, which was co-ed. There was gender discrimination at Penn, but it was well known to have the fewest restrictions on women. It was also 1964, a presidential election year, and as a member of a consortium of Ivy League radio stations, we participated in network coverage of election night. I had interviewed Barry Goldwater, the Republican nominee, when he came to campus to give a campaign speech. He was patient and responsive, much to my surprise, given my youth and inexperience. Heady stuff. As a result, I was a logical choice to go to Rockefeller Center in New York City and take part in election night coverage for the Ivy stations and their radio audiences from Dartmouth to Columbia. The only problem was when I checked in at the old Roosevelt Hotel near Grand Central Terminal, I was pre-registered as Andrew Mitchell and assigned a roommate, a guy from Yale. It took me a while to get my own room. I have no idea how we organized the coverage, except that I was assigned to broadcast results of the Senate races. All they expected me to do was rip and read the wire leads without any original reporting. It was pretty basic, but gave me a taste of how to combine my love of politics and broadcasting. By the summer of my senior year, I had found a part-time job at KYW, one of Philadelphia's top radio stations, and one of the first in the country to broadcast all news all the time. It wasn't to report the news. I only got in the door because my mother had forced her daughters to learn typing and shorthand as fallback insurance against life's surprises, and the station needed a summer relief secretary. Owned by Westinghouse Broadcasting, KYW News Radio dominated the market and had a sister television station that was an NBC affiliate. As graduation neared, I decided to apply to the management training program Westinghouse ran for college graduates. Getting accepted was the easy part. The real challenge was persuading them to let me into the all-male newsroom. Instead, they tried to steer me toward jobs more traditionally held by women, in public relations or advertising, which didn't interest me at all. Finally, I told them I would drop out of the management program if they would give me an entry-level job in the newsroom for union wages, about $50 a week. So with my Ivy League degree, I had talked my way into a job as a copy boy, which is what desk assistants were universally called in those days. I had to rip reams of wire reports spitting out from the old, clattering teletype machines, then hang one copy on a nail in the wire room and distribute the others to the anchorman of each hour's newscast. It helped if you remembered which anchormen liked their coffee black and which took sugar and cream. Most of the men helped me learn the ropes, but some delighted in hazing me as the only woman in the newsroom. As best I could, I tried to deflect or ignore it. To get interviews for their newscasts, I would work the phones, calling locations to find someone I could interview when a story broke. In between, I'd edit and transcribe the actualities, that's what we called sound bites, from the interviews, and log incoming audio feeds from London and other Westinghouse bureaus. They put me on the shift where they thought I could do the least harm, midnight to 8 in the morning. Most of my friends were in graduate schools with flexible hours. I felt isolated, especially because I had to try to sleep during the day. My social life was non-existent. Working nights meant walking through the center of the city, crossing Philadelphia's Rittenhouse Square to get to my graveyard shift. More than once, the police stopped me until I explained that I was a night worker, not a lady of the night. Although the hours were lousy, they were perfect for an apprentice reporter. Socially, Philadelphia was still a fairly provincial city, its business community governed by the mores of the main line. Politically, it was a cauldron of ethnic rivalries, dominated by competing Irish and Italian constituencies. When it came to political power, blacks need not apply. Add to this steaming stew the growing tensions over the Vietnam War and the movement for civil rights, and you had plenty of elements to fire the imagination.